Meta's big reveal of new AI glasses fizzled when not one, but two live demos glitched in front of a global audience. ABC suspends Jimmy Kimmel after FCC pressure, sparking outrage over free speech. Russia, China, and Iran pounce on Charlie Kirk's assassination to spread disinformation. Inside, the Center for Disease Control fired director Susan Moneris testifies she was pushed to sign off on vaccines without data. And tennis star Taylor Townsend apologizes for mocking Chinese cuisine at the Billie Jean King Arena in New York. Today on Filtered with TJ Walker. That's all coming up right now. Get ready for some fun. Welcome to Filtered with TJ Walker. Okay, thanks so much for joining us today. Today is Thursday, September 18th, 2025. Let's check in on market vitals before we dive into the show today. Quick recap, the S&P 500 closed at 6,600 yesterday, down 0.12%. The NASDAQ closed at 22,261, down 0.32%. Don't forget the long term. Long-term S&P 500 is up 9.8% on average per year. NASDAQ up 8.4% on average per year. Okay, we're going to dive right into the top stories of the day. And let's take a look at it right now. Meta used its annual Connect conference to unveil the next generation of smart eyewear. CEO Mark Zuckerberg introduced upgraded Ray-Ban Meta glasses, a new heads-up display model called the Ray-Ban display, and a neural wristband for hands-free control. The idea, he said, was to make AI a useful everyday companion instead of something that just sits in a data center. But the showcase didn't go smoothly. A cooking demo with food creator Jack Mancuso quickly went off script. When he asked how to start a Korean-inspired steak sauce, the glasses skipped over the basics and repeated confusing instructions. Mancuso blamed the Wi-Fi, and Zuckerberg joked, "The irony of the whole thing is that you spend years making technology, and then the Wi-Fi at the day catches you." Later, a demo of the wristband and Ray-Ban display glasses also faltered, forcing Meta's chief technology officer, Andrew Bosworth, to step in. "The Wi-Fi is brutal," Bosworth admitted, promising fixes ahead. Okay, so what's the real message here? Smart glasses are coming. I have no idea if Facebook is going to make any money or be dominant in this space, but I have no doubt that we as human beings are going to go from hunch over staring at our phones all day long to having something that covers our eyes, and that being the primary way we interact with the internet. On that, I'm certain. Okay, let's dig a little deeper. Facebook and Meta does not have a great track record when it comes to creating products. Their cell phone went bust. I mean, they're kind of like Google in that they try a million things and they're good at one thing. They're both good at selling ads. Does that mean that these Google or these Meta glasses can't be successful? No. I went to my local lens crafters here in Florida this past weekend and also a month ago, and each time they said, "We can't keep these things in stock. They're back ordered for months." So people do like these glasses. There's simply no denying it. Now, I was a little bit harsh in the news read here about these fails. Yes, anytime you're giving a demonstration in front of people and you're using Wi-Fi, it's risky. But think of all the extra publicity that Facebook received and Meta received because of these glitches. It got, well, for me, for one, looking at the video. I want to share with you, not the glitch videos, but I want to share with you how Mark Zuckerberg is presenting these days, and specifically how he presented these glasses, because I do think there is some interesting stuff going on here. So let me just pull this up 1 minute. We're going to add him to the stage. I'm going to be giving my commentary, so I will not be stealing the IP of Facebook or anyone else. We wouldn't want to be accused of that. But let's go ahead and take a look at his presentation, because he has evolved over time as a communicator and gotten much better. Let's take a look.
This is Meta Ray-Ban display.
Now, this is a section sort of sanctioned by Meta. They've put this up there. But I can tell you right out of the gate, Mark Zuckerberg is a much more assured, confident speaker than he was when he started Facebook. Now, that's not surprising. He was a kid. He was, 20 years old or so when he started. I still remember that infamous interview he did with Kara Swisher, then at the Wall Street Journal, I believe, where he was sweating so much, he sweat all the way through his jacket. She finally had to ask him, would you like to take your jacket off? He doesn't look like he's sweating much here. What I especially like is the pausing. He's not rushing. Nervous speakers, especially young nervous speakers, tend to speak too quickly. His pacing, I'm going to go back just a few seconds here. We're only 7 seconds in, but listen to how he's calm, not rushed, showing the importance of the moment.
This is Meta Ray-Ban display.
This is Meta Ray-Ban display. He's pausing in a way that, frankly, Steve Jobs used to when holding up some object of awe, like a new iPhone or an iPad. I'm not saying he's copying or mimicking me. It's something all great speakers do. And again, I'm going to get a lot of criticism for even calling Mark Zuckerberg a great speaker. I wouldn't call him a great speaker, yes, but he's certainly gone from awful to a high level of competence. There's simply no disputing that anymore. Again, the pausing. He's giving his audience time to react. There was some applause there, there was some whooping there. He took the time to act out, showing how simple it is to put on. This is not something nervous, callow speakers do. They rush. They want to quickly read through the script. And he's certainly not reading the script off his glasses there because he had them on, or he didn't have them on yet.
These are glasses with the classic style that you'd expect from Ray-Ban, but they're the first AI glasses with a high-resolution display. And
so I can't tell you whether he's using a teleprompter there in the venue or if he's looking at a teleprompter on his actual glasses at this point. But what I can tell you is he sounds like a real human being. And that traditionally was the problem with Mark Zuckerberg, is he tended to be frozen and stiff and blink in a slightly weird way, not have his head move. And that was the problem with him traditionally. Now he's coming across well. My apologies to our friends watching us and listening to us on TikTok, because you can't hear what I'm doing. And if you do want to hear the whole thing, you may want to check us out on YouTube, Facebook, any other social media platform, as well as listen on the podcast later. So apologies to our good friends on TikTok. Let's watch more and dissect more of how Zuckerberg comes across.
A whole new way to interact with them, the meta neural band. The display is large enough to watch a video or read a thread of messages.
So this is what makes me think that he's not just reading a teleprompter. He put that in. That's what people do when they're being conversational. That's what people do when they're just thinking for a moment. So to me, he comes across as supremely comfortable, relaxed, confident in this presentation, notwithstanding a couple of Wi-Fi blunders later.
It appears in one eye, it's slightly off center, so it doesn't.
Now here he's showing, what do you actually see? And it's a little bit hard to look on my screen, especially if you're on your cell phone now, but he's showing that if you're walking down a park, you can see a little bit of text on the bottom right side telling you what's going on. You can dictate messages. You can get text in. Now, I have no idea if this is going to drive people crazy or if this is going to make automobile crashes skyrocket even more. But it's interesting. It's compelling. I can't imagine a lot of people not wanting this.
Block your view, and it disappears after a few seconds when it's not in use, so it doesn't.
So he's now appearing. It's hard for you to see, but he's appearing on the screen in the bottom left as he's walking through this demo.
Distract you. So for the glasses.
And now they've cut to his hand, so you can see this control with the wristband. So I think they're making a pretty good case of how this would be used, doing it in a compelling way, doing it in an interesting way, and using the power of visuals and different camera angles where they can show what's going on.
We're replacing the keyboard, mouse, touchscreen, buttons, dials, with the ability to send signals from your brain with little muscle movements.
Okay, so this really distills what it's all about. He's saying with your, and these are not smart glasses, these are regular, he's saying with your glasses and your brain and maybe a tiny little muscle movement, you can do what you used to have to do, moving a mouse, doing typing, dictating out loud. And he's making a pretty compelling case. Again, I'm not telling you this is the next big thing, buy tons of Meta stock. This is not a stock investment tip show. And for all I know, they will absolutely bungle it. Some startup will do it well, and then Facebook will have to come buy it, or Google will buy it in the way they did with Instagram and WhatsApp and a million other businesses. So I don't know that they really have the capability or the institutional ability to create consumer products the way Apple did. But he's clearly on to something. He's distilling what the value proposition is very nicely. He's doing it in a way where it's understandable. He doesn't sound like a robot. And for Mark Zuckerberg, that is a huge accomplishment.
That the neural band will pick up so you can silently control your glasses with barely perceptible movements.
With barely perceptible movements. That doesn't sound like someone who's reading a teleprompter for the first time with barely perceptible movements. It's usually very easy to spot an amateur or a CEO or a business person reading a teleprompter because they make every word sound the same. They have the same volume, the same speed, the same pitch. So whether he's using a teleprompter on stage or on his glasses at this point, since the glasses are up, he's certainly done his homework. He practiced, he rehearsed, because he's putting in the correct intonations in his words, and it's making him sound believable.
The meta neural band is a huge scientific breakthrough. We have built.
It's a huge scientific breakthrough. He then pauses for just the right amount of time to let it set in, to make you realize, okay, this guy does think it's huge. Now, am I suggesting he's going to convince everyone and you and all your friends are going to go out and buy the glasses? No. I am saying if you're objectively analyzing Mark Zuckerberg as a communicator, he has improved greatly. And even though there were some tech blunders in his presentation yesterday, I think he presented this new product about as well as he could. Let's keep watching.
A neural interface into a durable, lightweight, comfortable, and good-looking wristband with 18 hours of battery life and is water resistant.
Okay, so that clearly sounds like that was written, rewritten, vetted, lawyers looking at it, marketing, investor relations team, product. I mean, that sentence sounds like it was written about 800 times. But again, to his credit, if he read it off of his glasses or a teleprompter, he read it in a way that was pretty convincing. He didn't stumble. It wasn't awkward. He didn't sound flat or frozen. So I like the way he's coming across here.
Okay, I could go ahead and I could dictate with my voice. I could send a voice clip. But I've got this neural band, and it's silent. And
So he actually has a little bit of a smile on his face. He's leaning on the table. Again, this is not the Mark Zuckerberg we saw certainly the first 10 years of running Facebook, where he seemed like the scared, nervous kid. He is grown, and believe me, there's plenty of things you could say what you don't like about Mark Zuckerberg and how Facebook is destroying our culture. We'll have to leave that for another day. Actually, it's part of it's going to be in another segment today. I'm just focusing on his communication skills here. And I have to tell you, they're pretty good and they've definitely improved.
and now, and you know, a lot of the time you're around other people. So it's
And now, you know, a lot of time you're around of other people. Here's where he sounds conversational. This doesn't sound scripted. It certainly doesn't sound memorized. It's not perfectly smooth, which actually makes it sound better.
good to just be able to type without anyone seeing. Play California Dreamin'.
From Spotify, here's California Dreamin'.
So now he goes into the demonstration part where he's asking it to play things, and he would be able to hear it right in his own ears. So that is my analysis of Mark Zuckerberg's most recent presentation that he gave earlier this week. Now, again, what led off the news piece was the fact that there were two big glitches that when they were doing the demonstration, not once, but twice, the Wi-Fi essentially failed, and it was embarrassing. Now, this has happened to Steve Jobs. It's happened to Bill Gates. It happens to anyone who tries to do live product demonstrations. Now, my traditional rule of thumb is don't do live presentations where you're dependent on Wi-Fi pulling up a website. Have it all there, have it as a download so that if the Wi-Fi completely disappeared, it wouldn't matter. That's my traditional advice to people when it comes to giving presentations. But this is different. He's got to be able to use the full power of AI and show it how it can quickly do things automatically without knowing in advance. So I understand the reason for doing it. And the fact that it wasn't perfect the first time, I don't think it's going to matter. I well remember the very first iPhone. I was excited. I had a Palm Trio. I went out and bought the iPhone, the very first iPhone, 2007. I didn't camp out overnight, okay, but I did buy it 2 weeks after it came out. And what everyone seems to forget, it was horrible. It was virtually impossible to type on the glass. I threw it away. I didn't come back to an iPhone until maybe 8 months later when they came out with another version or two. I went back to my Palm Trio because I just found it so awful initially, but the concept was great. And the look was great. Enough things were going well for iPhone that it basically couldn't be stopped. Now, Google famously came out with Google Glasses, about 10 years ago, and it was a huge, huge flop. I don't know if it was too soon or the fact that they are not a product company or if they just bungled trying to explain it, but it really was a huge embarrassment for Google. Facebook, you would say at first blush, is really more like a Google than they are like an Apple products company. But initially, the sales in the previous editions have been going really well. The salespeople I talked to in the Lens Crafters, who is, I don't know if that's their only distributor or certainly one of their main ones in shopping malls across America. I know when a salesperson is spinning me. I think I have a pretty good antenna. But in talking to a number of sales reps in the stores, sales clerks, they said, yeah, people really seem to like these. We've never had one return. There's a waiting list for months and it seems pretty popular. People like them. That's what I'm getting. I mean, that's the kind of buzz you want if you're introducing a new consumer product. Now, the prices in the store right now are like $300. This new one is going to be closer to $800. It'll be interesting to see if they can push themselves up the value chain and really make this work. We'll be watching this. I am fascinated by digital culture. I assume you are too. I don't know if this is going to be better for the world. Certainly, a lot has been talked about. I've talked about how the problem is people ignoring human beings, not looking people in the eye, hunched over, looking at a screen all day long. Having some kind of meta glasses or any kind of glasses where you're looking at people, it might increase intimacy and human connection. It might make things 10 times worse. It may be you're having a conversation with someone, they're looking at you, smiling, and then you hear them laugh and you didn't say anything and you realize they're watching a silly TikTok video while talking. They can't even see you. If that's what's going to happen, it could be further alienating to people. I don't know. I could certainly imagine politicians having something like this on where they're going to a big fundraiser and the data pops up. Oh, that's Jim Smithers. His wife is Susie. They gave you $10,000 last year. You sent in a request to him last week to give you $10,000. Ask if his kid got into Exeter yet. That's going to be extraordinarily popular for politicians, business people, networking people, marketing people. But is it going to make people suspect every human interaction they have? Like that, that person acted like they know me. I know they don't know me because I saw them at the grocery store yesterday. They didn't have their glasses on and they looked at me like I was from Mars. So I don't know. It's fascinating to see the evolution of technology, internet technology, AI technology, and I will continue to do my best to give you analysis right here. By the way, if you like that piece on me analyzing the presentation of Mark Zuckerberg, feel free to post videos of other business people, political leaders, cultural leaders in their presentations, and I'm happy to give you an analysis of that as well. Back in a moment. Filtered is brought to you by the following. Get the deeper takes I don't post anywhere else. Subscribe now at substack.com/@TJWalkerSuccess and stay in the loop. For years, people have asked how they could get one-on-one coaching from me inexpensively. Well, now you can, anytime, anywhere with the TJ Walker AI clone. It's like having me in your pocket, ready to help you prep for a speech, polish a pitch, or calm your nerves before a big meeting. You talk to it, it responds like I would, based on my real-world coaching of thousands of leaders and communicators. Check it out at tjwalker.ai. It's not just smart, it's personal. Want to support the show? Skip the ads and buy me a coffee. That's buymeacoffee.com/TJWalker. And we are back. I'm TJ Walker. This is Filtered. This is the show where we look at top business news, technology news, and culture news of the day. Filter it through the lens of communication skills and personal development skills, all with the goal of making you more successful. Here's my pledge to you. If you spend a little time with me each day, you'll learn more about important things going on in the world, and you'll actually learn how to improve your own communication, personal development skills so you're more successful in your personal life and your professional life. Learning about the news doesn't have to be doom scrolling. It doesn't have to be just, oh, there's more bad news. Yeah, we talk about the bad news here, but also the good news and how you can use news, no matter what form it comes in, to improve yourself. Let's dive into this next issue. ABC pulls Jimmy Kimmel after FCC pressure. ABC has suspended Jimmy Kimmel Live indefinitely, following political backlash to remarks Kimmel made about the man accused of killing conservative activist Charlie Kirk. According to the New York Times, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr denounced Kimmel's comments and suggested the agency might act against ABC, escalating pressure on Disney, which owns the network. Kimmel, in his Monday night monologue, said, quote, I'm quoting Jimmy Kimmel, this is what got him canned, quote, "We hit some new lows over the weekend with a MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them." Conservatives said that misrepresented the suspect's politics. Prosecutors noted the accused shooter, Tyler Robinson, had recently expressed some progressive views. Disney executives Robert Iger and Dana Walden made the decision to pull Kimmel before Wednesday's taping. Carr praised affiliates like Nexstar and Sinclair for preempting the show, while Senator Chuck Schumer called the move, quote, disgusting, despicable, and against democratic values. President Trump, traveling in Britain, posted that the suspension was great news for America. Okay, what's the real message here? The canning of Jimmy Kimmel is putting a stake through the heart of American democracy. It's taking our Constitution, shredding it, and it's certainly blacking out the First Amendment forever. This is an unmitigated disaster if you believe in freedom. Let's go a little bit deeper here. Now, this is troubling at so many levels. What we have now is right-wing wokeness in America, which essentially says anyone who doesn't give unmitigated praise to a far-right extremist, Charlie Kirk, is going to be banished from public life, is going to be punished in their career, is going to be banished from the public square. My friends, that's never happened before in the history of America. It's not something democracies do. And we got to dissect this a little more. Okay. First of all, let's assume for the moment a comedian made a factual error. Comedians make factual errors all the time. They don't lose their shows over it. Let's assume you found what he said distasteful. Guess what? Greg Gutfeld, the conservative comedian on Fox News, says things that liberals consider distasteful pretty much every night. No one's canceling him. Let's assume the statement was tactless. Comedians say tactless things all the time. They don't have their livelihoods destroyed from them. But let's dig a little deeper into his actual thoughts, because I do think it's important to tease this out, because too many people are conflating too many issues. Many on the right have essentially said, okay, this guy was murdered. He was assassinated. That's horrible. Right-wingers say that, but everybody says that. Every Democrat I've seen, every major centrist liberal media figure, they all have said it was horrible that he was murdered. I have condemned the murder. I condemn assassination. So in that part, we're all in agreement. So we don't really have to debate. Jimmy Kimmel did not say, wow, this guy deserved to be murdered. He didn't say that. Now, if he did say that, that could be considered extraordinarily tactless, rude, obnoxious. And you could say that that's so inflammatory that that might be up there to the level of yelling fire in a crowded theater, and repercussions should take place. Nobody is an absolute free speech absolutist. I realize that's redundant, but everyone recognizes there are some things you can't do, like yell fire in a crowded movie theater, because that would create a stampede and people could die needlessly. The question is, what gets to that level or close to that level where it is as dangerous? And this is where there's been a lot of conflating of issues. What we've seen now is the right in this country and the mainstream running this administration, to the extent that they're mainstream because they're running power, have now said, we're moving the bar. We're no longer saying that if you say this guy deserved it, and again, I'm not saying that, you deserve to be punished. What we're saying is, if you say anything critical that might hurt our feelings, that's the equivalent of calling for violence. And if you believe in logic, if you believe that words have meaning, that has to offend you. I don't care where you are, right-wing, conservative, libertarian. I don't care where you are on the spectrum. If you actually believe in words, if words having meaning, if you actually believe in intellectual principles, you cannot make the jump from, I don't like someone calling for violence, which we all agree, to, I'm going to take the measure of a person's career and quote them accurately and have some negative perceptions about that person's career, to then saying, oh, that's the same thing as calling for violence, because it's not. It's really, really not. Certainly, I don't know of any conservative who hasn't attacked some part of John F. Kennedy's track record, whether it was his family life, whether it was advocating certain civil rights. I don't know any conservative who hasn't at some point criticized something John F. Kennedy has said, some part of his inaugural address. Some people think, ask not what you can do for your country, or what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I've heard conservatives proclaim that is communism. It's not respecting the individual. And you know what? That's okay. But I don't remember anyone coming around and saying, oh, you quoted Kennedy accurately, but you criticized him. Therefore, you endorsed Oswald's assassination of the. I've never heard anyone make that leap. And my friends, that is the leap we are seeing every single day in America, where it is essentially shredding freedom and destroying our Constitution, destroying the very fabric of this republic. And it's, I for one am absolutely sickened by it. Now, of course, no one has to feel sorry for Jimmy Kimmel. He's already fabulously wealthy. He makes, in excess of $10 million a year. He's got extraordinary net worth. He'll be able to just do a show and a podcast on YouTube and continue making lots of money for the rest of his life. But what about the hundreds of people who work for him? Gone. Can't. What about all the other people who work at existing media companies who are now living in fear? They're trembling. They're going back and second guessing everything. A lot of network executives, media executives are going through and saying, we don't want the wrath of this administration. We realize we're on strong constitutional ground. We're not doing anything illegal, but we so fear this administration denouncing us, trashing us, throwing their goons at us, that we better play it safe. So we're going to have a new rule, new editorial rule. All of our commentators, our reporters, our comedians, everyone else, feel free to criticize any part of any Democrat, any centrist, any liberal, any progressive, rip them apart, make fun of them, mock them. That's okay. But do not criticize anyone that is liked by MAGA, that is liked by this administration. Don't criticize them. Don't even quote them accurately. Because that's the other thing we're seeing. We're seeing people lose their jobs because they quoted Charlie Kirk accurately. And they meant it as criticism. Now, let me tell you, when you devolve to a society where you cannot criticize dear leader or dear leader's friends, you're in North Korea. That's where you are. You're in Hungary. That's where you are. You're in communist China. That is where you're living now, my friends. And it's not a place I think anyone who pretends to like freedom should want to be. So this is going to have an extraordinarily chilling effect on things. And I think it's frankly bizarre, absolutely bizarre. Now, we got to tease this out a little bit more. I want to look at the actual essence of what Jimmy Kimmel says. Because, there are some who are saying, oh, sure, he shouldn't have said it. It was wrong. It was bad, but he has the right. That's one take, but I want to give you another take here that you perhaps have not considered. Again, the quote that got him canned from his monologue, from his show, was something he said in the monologue. We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them. Okay, I'm going to be fair here. I'm going to be objective, and I'm going to make a bunch of people angry. But I want to give some both sides arguments here. You could make the case that this particular individual, this indicted, arrested assassin, had been influenced by liberal left, far left ideas. If you interpret two facts in a certain way, one fact is he put something negative to fascism on the casing of the bullet. So if you like fascism and you like fascist administrations, you wouldn't put that, you would think. So that's one item, that's one fact to sort of go into the category of, okay, maybe this guy did have some sort of non-conservative, non-MAGA influencing him. Perfectly fair and reasonable. Fact two, he was allegedly in a relationship with an individual transitioning from male to female. Now, that's not something the typical MAGA lover, traditional family values crowd, conservative, you would think they'd want to do. It takes a little more of an open mind to be in a relationship like that. So those are two facts that you could use to make the case, okay, maybe this guy did have some new ideological orientation, very different from his upbringing. And maybe some people in that orbit got him so angry that he committed this atrocity. It's not crazy to glom onto those two facts to make your case. All human beings are occasionally guilty of confirmation bias. I am, you are, and if you think you aren't, you're deluded. So if you just saw those two facts, you could say, all right, this guy was clearly influenced by, let's just call it non-conservative, non-MAGA values. Okay, that's two. But now let's look at it from Jimmy Kimmel's perspective. He's basically saying that this assassin was a part of the MAGA family. What are the facts for that? Well, fact number one, some of his friends are on record as saying he liked Trump in high school. His grandmother says everybody in the family is a Trump-loving MAGA conservative Republican. That's fact two. Fact three, his town is heavy MAGA Republican support. So that is his environment. Fact four, his state is heavy MAGA Republican. Fact five, the church he belongs to that he grew up in, the Mormon church, is primarily, majority members of that church are supporters of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. None of those facts means that's what caused him to commit an assassination. But if you're simply looking at facts and being fair-minded, those are all facts that would say, okay, this person's worldview was shaped by a MAGA mindset. And that is essentially what Jimmy Kimmel was saying. Now, Jimmy Kimmel could have been wrong. It may be this guy is just freaking crazy and he had absolutely no coherent set of political ideologies whatsoever, because that's really the more likely scenario, more common scenario with any of these mass killers. They're just kind of isolated nuts. All we really know most of the time are these are young men, most of the time white, who spent a lot of time at home alone. That's really the number one thing we know about most of these guys who are mass, or either assassins or mass murderers, or take guns to school and blow people away. They're young men who have not found their way in society. But again, if we're looking at the math, there's essentially two factoids that could make the position that this guy was influenced by a left of center ideology, but there's 5 factoids, and they are much deeper. These are lifelong things, growing up in that culture, that would say he was completely influenced by right-wing culture. And the other thing, the 6th item on the bullet case, he makes an anti-gay joke. He says, if you can read this, you are gay. I don't know of anyone left of center who makes a joke like that. They don't think it's bad to be a gay. When you say, if you could do this, you must be gay, it's an implied negativity that you're gay, which can only be bad with a conservative mindset. So you've got 6 factoids saying if there is any ideological influence coming from greater sources, you've got 6 factoids saying it's a MAGA worldview. You've got 2 factoids saying, okay, maybe it is some left of center ideology. So that's a 3-to-1 ratio by my calculation. So if Kimmel would have been better by saying there's a 3-in-1 chance this guy is really more of a product of a MAGA environment than a left-wing environment, would that have made it any better? I don't think that the people who are upset would have cared, because they don't care about facts. What we're seeing is exploitation. We're seeing so many people cash in monetarily, selling paraphernalia, but politically, trying to use this crisis to crush and destroy political opponents. And it has all the markings of a true authoritarian regimes. And I guess I'm not even allowed to use the F word anymore regarding to political philosophies common in Italy and Germany in the 1930s and 40s, because that's considered hate. It's now considered hate to say anything that could be construed as critical of right of center political figures, commentators, politicians. And that's unfortunately where we are in America. Let's go on a little thought experiment here. Imagine a world where a transsexual individual murders someone, and again, I hope this never happens. I don't want it to happen. Murders someone on the far right. And this person grew up in the Upper West Side of Manhattan. The person's parents were left-wing radical professors at Columbia University who'd written wildly anti-screeds about the particular politician who met its demise. So, and this person is on record, everyone in their family is on record as voting against people that in a party opposite of the one who was murdered. So you got all these statistics showing this is the environment this person was in. And then we find out, like a week before the atrocity happened, the person went to a conservative Christian church and became baptized. Would we then say, okay, this person committed this murder, this assassination, because they went to this church? I don't think so. I think most fair-minded people, myself included, would say, that's too much of a jump. Look at all these other factors in the environment. Maybe we don't know, but saying it's this one thing. Now, imagine in my scenario, this person was a male killer, extreme left-wing radical parents, been involved with radical politics his whole life. Their bookshelves are lined with radical literature. And yet we find out that he has a girlfriend, 18 years old, beautiful, blonde, Christian, in a sorority at a nearby university. Would we then say, well, clearly this person was influenced by this ideology of this person committing the murder? No, we wouldn't say that. We would say, okay, that's one thing. That doesn't control it. So it's just totally bizarre, the convoluted thinking going on here. Sadly, this is not the end of the story. It's the end of our discussion for it right now, but it's not the end of the story, because I think we're going to be seeing more and more Jimmy Kimmels fired on a daily basis in America as long as this regime is in power. Imagine having a communication coach who never sleeps. Meet your new secret weapon, the TJ Walker AI clone. Go to tjwalker.ai and start getting custom coaching 24/7. No scheduling, no hourly fees. I've trained presidents, prime ministers, and Fortune 500 CEOs, but the same exact communication I've delivered to world leaders is now available to you online, anytime at MediaTrainingWorldwide.com. Whether you're speaking on camera, pitching a client, or handling a crisis, you need these tools. These aren't fluffy motivational videos. They're practical, battle-tested techniques to help you speak clearly, competently, and persuasively. Go to MediaTrainingWorldwide.com and take your communication to the next level. Russia, China, and Iran exploit Kirk's murder for disinformation. This is not good, my friends. Foreign adversaries are using the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk to spread disinformation, falsehoods, and deepen divisions in the United States. As NewsGuard analysis found that Russia, China, and Iran mentioned Kirk more than 6,200 times in state media in just 1 week. The narratives vary, from Russia blaming Ukraine to Iran pointing at Israel's secret service to China's amplifying the idea of a divided America. But the goal is the same: undermine U.S. democracy. Utah's Governor Spencer Cox warned, "We have bots from Russia, China, all over the world that are trying to instill disinformation and encourage violence." Russian nationalist Alexander Zhugin even claimed Kirk's murder was orchestrated by the deep state and George Soros. Pro-China accounts spread fabricated details about the shooters. The authorities have said the accused killer, Tyler Robinson, acted alone. Still, America's rivals are using the tragedy to amplify conspiracies and sow distrust. Okay, so what's the real message here? America has real enemies: China, Iran, other totalitarians, and they are using misinformation to tear America apart on this Charlie Kirk issue. They're spreading disinformation, like the idea that it was George Soros and some liberal cabal or the deep state that murdered this guy, and it's all about destroying America. And sadly, it seems to be working. Let's go a little deeper here. It always amazes me that, look, everybody has confirmation bias. I have confirmation bias. You have confirmation bias. If you're an honest person, you realize that. But when you see something floating across the screen on a news page or Facebook or social media, especially if it's like an advertisement, but even if it's not an advertisement, and lo and behold, it's somebody you don't like, and lo and behold, it's information about how this person committed the most heinous act ever, conspired to molest children and murder people. And what do you know? It's the person I didn't like. I always knew I didn't like that person. Here's confirmation. And you never actually look at the source. You never actually look to see if it is a reputable source of information. Because here's the one thing I know with absolute certainty, and if you're honest, you do too. The algorithms are pushing you information that is going to be interesting to you and tells you what you want to hear. If you want to hear that drinking alcohol is good for you, and you constantly click on stories that, oh, disregard all this stuff about drinking too much, drink a bottle of wine. And after a while, your algorithm will just be pushing you story after story after story. Here's Jane Smithers. She's 114, and she credits her long life to drinking 2 bottles of wine a day. Your feed will be filled of that. And And that is going to shape your worldview. Well, these bad actors, Russia, China, Iran, know that's human nature, and they are pushing this nonsense now that it was an inside job. Yeah, kind of like what they did with 9/11. And this idea that the deep state, first of all, that's so stupid at so many levels, it almost hurts the brain to think about it, but it's going to be pushed. And George Soros is always a popular boogeyman. Autocrats, dictators, haters of freedom everywhere are always piling on George Soros. And who knows? Maybe we'll find out that Ted Cruz's dad somehow was responsible for this. Wouldn't surprise me at this point. But we got a real disinformation campaign. Look, you might not know me, and I appreciate you watching me. Google me. Check up on me. Make sure I'm not giving you disinformation. I do give you facts based on what I find in reputable journalistic sources across the spectrum. Quite often, my stories are sourced on investigative journalism in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, sometimes the New York Post, even CNN. I use a variety of sources. I don't just click on a story where I see something where, oh, here's a politician I don't like, and it's saying they eat babies. That's not what I'm giving you. And I urge you, you've got to use some discretion about what you are putting into your brain and what you're watching, because the world is awash with just absolute garbage, absolute nonsense, and it's only getting worse. Okay, this is Filter with TJ Walker. We're going to move into our next story here in just a moment. There's lots more to come. So looking forward to that. And we're going to switch. We're going to transition in one moment to our next story. CDC shakeup, insurers rebel, FDA reviews. The CDC is in an open turbulence, and the fallout now stretches to your wallet. According to the New York Times, former CDC director Susan Maneras told senators she was fired, quote, for holding the line on scientific integrity, alleging Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. called CDC staff corrupt and accused them of killing children, while pressing her to pre-approve vaccine decisions without seeing the data. She warned that short-circuiting evidence puts at risk our children. Meanwhile, after Kennedy replaced all 17 members of the vaccine panel, committee chair Senator Bill Cassidy said if the new panel changes the childhood schedule, Americans, quote, should not trust it. In a remarkable move, the major insurers trade group said they'll keep covering routine shots even if the panel restricts them. And separately, the FDA is reviewing reports of COVID vaccine injuries and deaths under pressure from Kennedy and allies, while stressing decisions must rest on evidence. Okay, what's the real message here? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is out of control. There's complete turmoil in the agency he runs. Reputable scientists, reputable doctors are pulling their hair out saying, this guy's crazy. He wants us to take evidence, throw it out in the window, and destroy, possibly kill millions of people across the country and the world because of the decisions he's making. We can't stand it anymore. That's essentially what they're saying. Let's dig a little deeper here. Again, I'm paraphrasing that. That's not their exact quote, but learn to read between the lines. This Kennedy guy, I'm beginning to think that Trump is wondering, is this really what I bargained for? Now, Trump and Kennedy had no real affiliation or connection, but Trump said, you know what? I can get a whole bunch of these Maha moms, this Maha movement constituency to vote for me. They like this guy. I don't care about health. I'm going to keep eating ice cream and chicken, Kentucky Fried Chicken. I don't care about health. I don't care if people die. If this guy can get me a few votes for the election, fine. I happen to think that is his sentiment. But the one thing Trump doesn't like is when somebody gets more attention than he does, especially if it's negative attention. And it's a rare day Kennedy's not dominating the news with either some decision where mainstream medical experts think this is really jeopardizing the lives of a lot of people, or reports from people who currently work in his organization or have worked for him, who are saying, we have to speak out. This guy is a public health menace. And it just gets worse every single day. And some of these senators, these Republican senators who really pushed him, to their credit, said, I want to make sure if I vote to confirm you, and he only got in by one vote, let's not forget. If I vote to confirm you, you're not going to get rid of vaccines, are you? Oh, no, Senator, absolutely no problem. And then what does he do? Every single decision is essentially undercutting this nation's commitment to vaccines and healthcare. A lot of those senators, they're afraid to say it, because as soon as they do, Trump will attack them, and they will face threats to their person on a daily basis, but they'll also face threats in a primary, and their funding sources dry up. So you're going to see a lot of cowardice from senators who feel betrayed by this guy. They really felt like, okay, he gave a promise and he broke it, but they're too afraid to say anything. Taylor Townsend apologizes for mocking Chinese cuisine. American tennis star Taylor Townsend, the world's #1 in doubles, has apologized after posting Instagram videos mocking dishes at a buffet in Shenzhen during the Billie Jean King Cup. In her clips, Townsend calls sea cucumbers crazy, said turtles and bullfrogs were wild, and added, "These people are literally killing frogs." The comments drew sharp criticism on Chinese social media, where many accused her of cultural insensitivity and perpetuating stereotypes. In a written statement, Townsend said, quote, "There's no excuse, there is no words, and I will be better." Analysts note the controversy taps into a long history of American stereotypes about Chinese food, depictions of it as dirty or bizarre, stereotypes that surfaced during the COVID-19 pandemic. The backlash highlights how global athletes must navigate cultural differences with care. All right, what are we to make about this? Part of me feels like, okay, this is too much. This is too much nitpicking. Does everyone have to get upset about every single thing everyone posts? But food is a part of culture, and people care about culture massively. What's the bottom line here? Yes, Taylor Townsend was insensitive, mocking the eating of bullfrogs. But you know what? Every culture eats something weird, disgusting, icky to somebody else's culture. So if you want to get rich off social media, which we all do these days, best to keep your mouth shut making fun of other people's food. Let's dig a little deeper here. Now, I've been in Shenzhen, and I've eaten in a lot of restaurants there. I happen to love Chinese food. That doesn't mean it's good for you or better than anything else, but I love the sea cucumbers. And yes, I've eaten frog legs. Sorry if that offends you, and some other things too that I'm not even going to mention. But again, every culture eats some food that other people think is crazy. A lot of people in India, and I appreciate our Indian viewers today, think the way we eat cows and beef all the time is utterly disgusting, and we're cow killers, and that's weird to them. Now, do I love every aspect of Chinese food? Have I eaten chicken feet? Yes, I have. Not my favorite, but I'm not making fun of it, because if you want to get down to pure disgusting content in a food, you'd have a hard time finding anything more disgusting than what is in a typical American hot dog. And I don't see many tennis players mocking what's in a typical American hot dog these days. Here's really the bottom line. If you are a sports star these days, especially if she's #1 in the world for doubles, I had not heard of her before, but that's my ignorance. That doesn't mean she's not famous and doesn't have a lot of followers in social media. If you are an athlete and you've worked really hard and you've gone to the top of your field, chances are in 2025 and in the future, you're going to have so many followers on social media that you are essentially a big media business, which means you can make a lot of money. It therefore behooves you not to be obnoxious and to go out of your way to be insensitive and to mock what other people eat. Can you criticize people? Yes, although in America, it better not be anyone right of center. You should be able to criticize people, things. You should be able to criticize the quality of food at a restaurant if you're a restaurant critic. But to just make generic statements about how this is icky and weird and strange does not build your media brand, and it's going to have an effect on your long-term bottom line. Hey, that's all the time we have for today. I've got to hop over to do a live session with my online students, but I want to thank you for joining me today. I'm TJ Walker. This is Filtered with TJ Walker. We come to you 7 days a week, analyzing the top stories of the day, top business, economic, technology stories of the day, filtered through the lens of communication skills and personal development skills, all with the goal of making you more successful. Thanks.